So first off, we will have Toni Bator presenting on workplace mental health from a coaching perspective. Toni, if you would like to take it away.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm going to share here and hopefully you can see my slides. Everyone able to see those?
Yep.
Thumbs up. Excellent. So, hello everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, wherever you're calling in from. My name is Toni Bator, and I am part of the Global Mental Health Peer Network, also known as AVEZ. And I will be doing a short presentation, hopefully a little bit longer than the 10 minutes, workplace mental health from a coaching perspective. Um, I am a care coach for several employment assistance programs, and care coaches are um, they're professionals who help employees to develop strategies to build resilience and strengthen stress management skills. I help employees to care for their well-being. And I thought that this was going to be an interesting presentation because several of the founders of these EAP organizations have actual lived experience with mental health challenges. And this is one of the reasons why they started the companies such as Spring Health, is one of them. I also coach for Better Up, Association for Autism and Neurodiversity, and Positive Psychology Coaching and Diversity Institute. Um, so at the end of this, I can also send a 2025 Forrester report, which was on mental health at work and the gaps. So you can let me know if you're interested in that. And so let's see here. Agenda. By the end of this presentation, we will know why workplace mental health needs to be a top priority, the impact on employees and employers, contributing factors, how to build a supportive culture, benefits and organizational outcomes of mental well-being programs, and measuring outcomes and successes. So the big question, why workplace mental health needs to be a priority? As you can see from the statistics, right, 28% of US workers ranked work-related stress and burnout among the top 3 factors negatively affecting their mental health last year. And as we know, burnout is caused by prolonged stress. Um, as far as FMLA, family medical leave assistance, this is where I currently see quite a few employees. They're in the phase of burnout and they take leave of absences. And I help them navigate if they are to return to work, if they are emotionally, psychologically, physically able to, or if they are going to look for another job or ask for accommodations. Um, Quitting, the results of mental health and well-being at work. Quite often employees will quit. Um, there's also what we call disengagement, right? The quiet quitting, bare minimum Mondays, which was a new one for me. I didn't hear that one. And acting your wage. So those are just some comments that people make about being disengaged, showing up for work, and basically just showing up. Increase in absences. When we are experiencing mental health challenges, it's very difficult to get up and go to work, right? So some of these statistics are very sobering. We spend approximately 90,000 hours of our lifetime at work. So that's a third of our life, 31% actually. Um, and to think about that, that is a lot of time spent with colleagues and stakeholders, customers, whatever industry you work in. That is quite a few hours. 1 in 4 employees consider quitting their jobs due to mental health concerns. and 7% did quit because of mental health challenges, according to NAMI 2025. And this number, 66%, this is quite a large number of employees experience job burnout, according to Forbes. And as we know, burnout leads to depression, anxiety. 44% identified stress as their top mental health challenge. And stress is the body's response to physical, emotional, and mental demands. Um, Exhaustion caused by stress, burnout, and the cost to not only employees, but employers is an estimated $300 billion annually to employers. So let's get down to the meat of it. Impact on employees. So aside from increase in disability claims and mental health leave requests, which are very important, it's nice to see that employees are using these resources. Um, Mental health disability claims are 7 to 10% of all short-term and long-term claims, and 22% increase in mental health leave requests and absences. Um, but this doesn't show the true impact to employees, which employees will experience emotional and psychological effects, right? Irritability, anxiety, depression, the cognitive effects, poor executive functioning skills, the inability to concentrate, poor time management, organization, physical health, insomnia, headaches. And as we see here, decreased performance and productivity. There are professional consequences. Um, so many of the clients I work with end up on performance improvement plans, um, and having to be monitored closely, and the stress of keeping up with adhering to whatever's on those pips can be stressful in itself. So those are some of the impacts on employees. Impact on employers. Um, we have increased absenteeism and turnover. Definitely increase in healthcare costs, low morale, legal exposure. I mentioned that because quite often, when employees need reasonable accommodations, sometimes employers are not fully aware of the process of what they need to provide if someone has a disability. So there could be legal ramifications. Workplace safety and errors, impact on team dynamics, and retention and recruitment challenges. So, what are some of the contributing factors? Why? Why is there an increase in mental health challenges? Health challenges. Think about long COVID. Many individuals, many employees suffer from side effects, some symptoms due to COVID, long COVID, um, chronic illnesses, financial and economic uncertainty, and political tension. There's just so much unknown right now in the world, and financially, people are at the end of the rope. They, working so many jobs or working extra hours. The emotional demands of caregiving. I'm sure many of you have heard about the sandwich generation, right? Those of us who have children and elderly parents, and the stress of, meeting everyone's needs and working, taking care of our children and our loved ones, our parents. Climate change and natural disasters. We are seeing definite increase in fire, floods, tornadoes, and these events disrupt our lives. The fires was decimated neighborhoods. Your home is gone. Um, Technology and always being on call, right? Someone can hit you up on Slack. They can text you. It's like you're always have to be available. And the one for me that I hear so often, throughout my career is toxic work dynamics and unclear expectations. Um, 10 to 30% leadership can be either toxic or incompetent. And this is a reality that employees face. And think about if you're an employee who already is vulnerable and you either have neurodiversity or you have mental health challenges to begin with, and then having to navigate working with a toxic leadership. Definitely a contributing factor in additional stress. So, how do we build a supportive culture? I definitely know that modeling openness and normalizing mental health conversations is imperative. Also, encouraging employees to speak up without fear of retaliation, right? Psychological safety, that's a big one. And my favorite, peer support, right? ERGs, employee resource groups, so important to feel a sense of belonging, sharing lived experiences, mentoring, encouraging boundaries and self care, fostering healthy workloads, um, offering universal therapy, coaching access, creating policies to accommodate different working styles and needs. And I talked about um, was it reasonable accommodations? People, employees have different needs, and employers need to realize that and accommodate them so they can perform at their best and they can thrive in their role. Training managers to support mental health. I believe that training in emotional intelligence, trauma informed leadership um, is also very important. And there are benefits and outcomes when mental health benefits are provided. Employees feeling less stressed, more in control, and less alone. Productivity increases 24%, and the turnover drops 60% when mental health benefits are provided. That's big. Reduce absenteeism, improve loyalty and morale, increased engagement, cost savings, and better recruitment. And lastly, measuring the outcomes and successes. So tracking the metrics. What are employee stress levels? How many absences? Is there a pattern of absenteeism, of turnover, engagement scores? And Spring Health talks more about that. If you can send out the slides, and it'll bring you to the ROI on providing mental health care to employees. Survey employee experiences. Um, I believe that all supervisors should receive 360-degree feedback, um, anonymously, even if they need to. And that's the only way that we are going to be able to tell um, if if there are issues with supervisors. Hopefully it'll become more transparent, because otherwise toxic leaders can function for quite a while and people are fearful of retaliation. Adjusting therapy and coaching offerings and adding offerings such as substance use disorder treatment, parent coaching, sleep coaching, neurodiversity coaching, psychiatry, medication management. One of the platforms I work on does evaluations and assessments for individuals who believe they may have ADHD or autism spectrum disorder. It's like having a one-stop shop where the employee can go and receive mental health services. You don't have to wait for them. Um, you can find someone, you can be paired with someone that will have a rapport with, and I really think that it's beneficial. And thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Tony. Excellent presentation. Um, One thing that I wanted to add, if I may,
Hmm.
when talking about workplace mental health, obviously it's different between like private sector versus people who work in the mental health field. But also there's a lot of studies that have shown that within mental health specifically, there's high rates of burnout. So there's obviously differences there, but I think so much of what you talked about really applies to this as well. So thank you so much.
Oh,
Uh,
thank you, Taylor.
there will be opportunity for questions. I just want to move into the next presentation first, and then we'll open it up for the Q&A. So next we have Divya and Alex, who will be talking about best practices and peer support. Go ahead and take it away.
I've mastered unmuting myself before I start talking. I'm growing up, everybody. All right. Everyone can see this, hopefully. All right, cool. So I will preface this, and we wanted to preface this with like, there are so many best practices, obviously, but in 10 minutes, to get through all of them is you need to know how to rewind time to be able to do that, in my opinion. So we kind of picked three that were kind of based on shared experiences or things that we've experienced that we feel like kind of help. So there's a lot of, kind of personal experience attached to this. But yep. So our presentation is called From Lived Experience to Lasting Life, Best Practices and Peer Support. I'm Alex Sheehan, been a part of the Avos Mental Health Network and part of the Country Leadership Committee. I know name change TBD. For a little over, I'd say about 14 months now, which has just been really awesome. And I live in Washington State. Divya, if you want to introduce yourself.
Yes, absolutely. So, hi everyone. My name is Divya. I'm new to the Aves Mental Health Network and the Country Leadership Committee. I've been here since June. So excited to be jumping in. And I'm based in San Diego, California.
Awesome. Okay. So, all right, there's us. Awesome. Okay, so three that we wanted to talk about, in the time span we had, we wanted to go over just kind of the importance of peer support, and defining, peer support and just kind of exploring, you know, um, best practices. I have to say that for me, peer support has been, um, I I don't think I trigger warning. I don't know if I would be here had it not been for peer support and the outpouring of constant love and support and reaffirmations in things when I really needed it most. And because of that, I find myself able to, and I've kind of made it my mission, all my academia, my work, my just kind of, I guess, a collective who Alex Sheehan is by definition is just, I want to take that same love given to me and I want to pour that support back out into the world, tenfold. Divya, I don't know if you wanted to comment on anything before we dived into the meat and potatoes.
Yes,
So
absolutely. I love what you said, Alex. I think I resonate completely with that sentiment that I don't know if I would be here if it wasn't for peer support. A lot of the best practices that we're going to be talking about today are some of the elements that are most foundational to my healing. And that's why I'm really excited to dive into this topic. One of the things that we also wanted to do is define peer support for everyone here because it's integrated into so many different intersections as we can see throughout this series that we're doing in peer support. So for our presentation's sake, we're defining peer support as people with lived experience of mental health conditions supporting others on their recovery journey through empathy, shared understanding, and mutual respect. So today we'll share a few best practices that create those meaningful, ethical, and sustainable relationships. I'll pass it back to you.
awesome. Thanks. Okay, so our first one that we really wanted to talk about, and that's kind of really helped us, is just um, the centering of lived and living experiences within boundaries. I feel like, at least for me, when we bring lived experience into our work, into our spaces, where I think it's pretty obvious here, we're doing something very powerful. We're transforming, I think, what was once deeply personal into something extrinsically purposeful. But as everyone's favorite superhero says, with great power comes great responsibility, right? And I think that's to ourselves, that's to our peers, and that's to the communities that we serve and that we are, building relationships with that are long lasting. And, centering lived experience, it doesn't have to mean, sharing everything. Like and everyone is at their own different paces of like what they share, how they share. It's your story. You are the complete owner. No one can ever tell you what you can and cannot do with that, right? For me, I'm an open book. I've just gotten to that point where that's where I am, and I've learned that, when we use them meaningfully, empathetically, strategically, our stories are tools for connections and learning, and they're not our entire identities. And again, we choose what to share and when, ensuring that our story serves the moment rather than consumes us. And I got to a point at one point where I really felt like just bear it all or it didn't mean anything. Which again, that was a hard lesson learned for me. And maintaining healthy boundaries is a part of that. And, we have to protect our own wellness, and a very big believer that obviously practicing self-care is not selfish. It's what allows us to keep showing up fully. And Toni, I love that you gave the presentation like right before this, because a little bit about like my story. Um, After I had done a lot of healing was how much time you have to spend on your healing journey, but how quickly in a toxic environment that can unravel so fast. And for me, it was a workplace. I did not have healthy boundaries. I was kind of living under this notion that and follow my logical fallacy here for a moment. Um, uh, Helping people, I worked in human services for about 10 years. So helping people made me happy. So, and being happy, and that feeling made me feel good. So helping people filled my cup. So that was the logic I was operating with for so long. Until all the pressure, everything, and just undealt with traumas and things, just it imploded. And I think I went back very close to getting back to a point I was in like my late teens, early 20s. And, um, I feel like these boundaries, as I've had to learn that hard lesson again in my late 20s, 4 or 5 years ago, I've learned that, when we care for ourselves, we really preserve the capacity to be intentional, to stay grounded, and to be present with our peers. Boundaries for you, whatever that looks like. And again, I also recognize that not everyone, subscribes to the word of recovery. But for me, I guess, recovery and healing were interchangeable. But I learned that these boundaries really created space for reflection, for renewal, so that I can always continue to engage from a place of strength rather than a place of depletion. I did not realize that I was practically running on E for so long. And these boundaries really remind us that, we can only pour into others when our cup itself is not empty. And that modeling recovery through boundaries really shows others that, at least in my lived expertise, is that healing isn't linear and it's never a finished process. And it's something that we live and lean into every day and we work on every day. And, by being intentional about our energy and our transparency, I think we ourselves are also exuding and modeling extrinsically resilience, self-respect, and our own sustainability so that we can keep being there for one another. And so, as we work together, really centering lived experience with care, um, intentionality, and empathy, we're ensuring that, I feel like our personal and professional advocacy efforts stay authentic because they're they're grounded and rooted in our truths. They're guided by our purposes, and they're continually sustained by compassion for ourselves and each other. So I will pass it on to Divya.
Great. Thank you so much for that and for sharing your personal experiences as well. I think that's what we're here to do. So that was perfect. Our next best practices that we wanted to talk about are mutuality and empathy. And mutuality was a new word for Alex and I, but the definition was not. So I'm excited to be able to share that today. So we really wanted to focus in on these because peer support is not about fixing someone, but it's about walking alongside them and being on the journey with them. So the first key point to think about here is relationships being based on mutuality. And this word means when both people give and receive in the process. So there's a shared power dynamic. There's not a hierarchy of sorts that tend to come up in typical clinical systems and psychiatric systems, patient, doctor, therapist, patient, et cetera, et cetera. This makes it possible, mutuality makes it possible for shared learning and growth. It establishes a deep respect and trust. There's a value of each other's experiences and so on. So this can be made possible by, for example, setting expectations of the relationship or community agreements, peer-to-peer agreements that can be really helpful to set those expectations. I also mentioned a lack of hierarchy. So here, empathy replaces hierarchy. So it's not a you versus me in the situation or a you and me. It's a you and me or a we. So to achieve this empathy, we really need to hone in on how we attempt to understand another person's thoughts and feelings, putting ourselves in their shoes. So when we're talking with someone about their mental health, thinking about what questions we're asking and what specific things we're doing or saying to validate the other person's experience. So that leads to the very last point, which is to validate experiences without judgment. And here I think language and communication style really, really matter. So instead of saying, well, you should do this, and if I was in your position, I would do this, you would say, I hear you, and kind of repeat back to the person what they said to show that you are listening. Thinking about your communication style and adapting it and the tone to be tailored to the peer and the situation really helps. Avoiding labels, jargon, stereotypes, those can be really harmful, and replacing it with recovery language or healing language. So making it person first, respectful, focusing on strength, like Alex said, and potential as opposed to depletion. So for example, instead of saying an addict, you would say a person with substance use disorder. When I was thinking about mutuality and empathy, I was thinking back to, again, content warning, to when my best friend passed away to suicide. And when that happened, I was really in the depths of my depression, and obviously grief just compounded it all. And I remember I was kind of searching for an intellectual and empathetic understanding of kind of what was going on. So I was kind of reaching out to everyone in my community, trying to heal, figure out what's going on. I was so distraught, of course. And I remember one example in particular where I approached a family friend who's a psychiatrist, and I was like an expert, who better to talk to about this situation than them, through an informal conversation. And my best friend had bipolar disorder, but that was the extent of what I knew about her medical situation. And when I asked for help and understanding, this family friend, the psychiatrist, went on to speculate all of the reasons why taking their life could have happened from a clinical perspective. And who knows what of it was true. This person had never talked to, the person, and even if they had, it wouldn't have been their place to share that with me. So I sat there feeling shocked and hurt and certainly not feeling comforted. And I remember telling my mom about that afterwards, and her response was, well, they were just trying to help. And what I really needed from that moment was empathy and mutuality, something that I would later get from peer support circles that were focused on suicide loss. And it really just led to this understanding that when empathy and mutuality are central to the work, it creates an environment of and feeling of trust and comfort. So that's best practice number 2. We'll go on to best practice number 3, which is promoting connection and empowerment. So often we know that we have this loneliness and isolation epidemic around the world, and connection is really the antidote to that isolation. So we want to focus on self-determination, meaning helping our peers set their own goals and define what recovery means to them. So going back to this idea of recovery language, really redefining what success looks like to them, not based on what society standards are. Because there are a lot of societal standards, especially when it comes to mental health and quote unquote madness, that are pushed for normalcy. And not all of these normal standards are to the benefit of the people who are in pain. So really thinking about what our definition for success is and what that looks like, because it may look different to different people. The second thing to do to promote connection and empowerment is to foster those community connections. So helping your peer link to groups, activities, or services that align with their goals. So often the West will highlight independence as a success, but interdependence and interconnectedness are very, very healing. So here the idea of collective healing and action comes into play. So this idea that when all of us work together towards healing, we all will benefit. And then finally, celebrating progress, even small wins matter. I remember on the days when I was feeling really, really difficult, the same best friend that I was talking about before, she would text me and I would text her. It was a mutual thing, of course. And we would ask each other, what is one thing that you did to make yourself happy today? And these were the days when even taking a shower or brushing my teeth felt like so difficult. So she would encourage me to do that one thing and then really celebrate that win. So whether it was opening the door and sitting outside for 20 minutes, brushing my teeth, or if I was feeling extra ambitious and had a lot of energy that day, going for a yoga class, doing that one thing really helped me because it helped me feel like it was one foot in front of the other and reminding myself that tomorrow is a new day. So I try to continue using this practice of celebrating the small wins. What is one thing you did to make yourself happy today with the people in my life? Because when people feel seen, supported, empowered, peer support becomes more than just a tool, it becomes a way of being. And I'll pass it to Alex to close us out.
All right. Well, you you heard it, you seen it, you witnessed it. Our best practices, like I said, there's so many of them, but these were 3 that we felt really kind of encapsulated our own experiences and kind of how it's translated and transcended over time to where we are in this moment and the things that we learned and practiced that give us I don't want to say the confidence, but like that allow us to be fully present in this space doing what we're doing. And so, we're hoping that people learned a little bit, centering lived experience with boundaries. Again, cultivating that mutuality and empathy. Again, mutuality was just as itself a new word for me. And then, promoting connection and empowerment. And so we thank you for spending a little bit of your time with us. Thank you.
Another excellent presentation. Thank you both. I really appreciate you sharing not only, the best practices that you wanted to highlight, but both of your lived experience with that as well. And something I also wanted to return to that Alex said, which was about why it was so hard getting, best these topics, very complex, broad topics down into 10-minute presentations. So I commend all of the presenters for their work on that. And I also wanted to expand on that. When we were working on putting this webinar together, we wanted to talk about peer support, and there were all these different ideas and suggestions that different presenters had, and we couldn't pick like a single topic that we wanted to do. So we went with all of them because, like peer support, there's all these different unique perspectives. So we wanted to really encapsulate that, have these sort of mini presentations, and offer you all the opportunity to be able to ask questions afterwards. So thank you all. With that, we will go ahead and stop the recording and open up for questions.